Having been in some of the best offers in the space and having set and closed over 1.5 million in cash collected in just over a year, here's the right systems that I would instill into a coaching business to turn their average reps into a team of consistent winners. And when I look at most coaching businesses in the space, when they say that they train their reps, all they do is put their reps into a Slack channel, do a Zoom roleplay with them, and expect miracles from it, which isn't the case. When it comes to this, there's fundamentals that need to be followed and management that needs to be instilled. So the framework that I put, it's the performance framework, where number one, it's training and the environment, which we'll go over. The feedback loops you need to set in place, the leadership you need to set in place, and the mindset as well as that to implement these three traits that ultimately drive towards autonomy and ownership. Right, eventually you want to get your reps to a point where they can self-diagnose themselves, they can work on it themselves, and use you as a layer of communication to help out and assist when needed. Now it starts off with the training and the environment, right? The first pillar would be is having a pod group setting. I've gone over this so many times in my videos, but pod groups are super important because it's where you can learn the most, and you're also it's like a mini mastermind. You're learning from other people in the group, perhaps people who are maybe a little bit worse, maybe a little bit better as a rep, and you're learning different patterns. You're recognizing things, and you're able to use that pod group as a way to learn, where the person running the pod is going over a core principle, a core teaching. From that, you discuss with the people on the team, like what's working, what's not working, what are they doing, what are they not doing. And you can gauge, and it's a good mastermind effect where it gets a good environment of the whole team training. It's not an individual thing where one person's getting better, the rest are sucking. Everybody is getting better. Everybody's getting turned into a consistent winner. And secondly is call review culture. So actually having a culture that's open to reviewing calls, even on the pod groups, reviewing calls for the whole team to hear. I remember when I was a rep, I would hate when my calls were played because I'd feel embarrassed. But at the same time, that's what makes you good. That's how I became a top performer on the team, because I put myself in those scenarios and I opened myself up to feedback and call reviews and people's takeaways and people's thoughts on it so that I could ultimately get better. And when everybody has that mindset, everybody gets better. So it's a really good way to have a call review culture. Even the little seconds, the little segments of those core reviews that can be worked on and that could be made better, because you can always get better. And thirdly is accessible training assets. So actually providing good training assets for your team, or whether it's like a little hub where they have all these resources. For setters, it's setting frameworks; for closers, closing frameworks, objection handling toolkits, resources where people can actually learn from at their own pace outside of the pod groups and the core review culture. And that's how you have a good environment for training. People are constantly learning better. You're not just learning off one thing, one call every single week. You're learning on a consistent basis at different fields, and you'll learn different skill sets at each different field. So secondly is feedback loops. So going to the first pillar when it comes to feedback loops is giving immediate specific feedback to your people, right? You can't be giving feedback 24 hours or even 40, I can't even imagine 48 hours in advance of them asking. You want to move with speed, and the coaching business as a whole moves with speed. And if somebody has a question in the morning, that again, you just needing to give them a little nugget will help them overcome that. That just saved them a whole day of selling. Because if that was a bottleneck that they faced and they didn't get help, they wasted a whole day selling, doing the wrong things, or being confused on a certain topic that could have messed later down the line. So super important that you have immediate specific feedback and systems in place where people can get that help within hours, even minutes. Super important. Secondly, is using data over feelings. When I was a setter, I would never ever go to my sales manager and tell him something's going wrong. Like, he would look at me with disgust. I had to show data over my feelings. Well, I'm losing people here at this stage of the call. The most common thing I'm getting is XYZ. They're telling me this. Why do you think that is? Here's the numbers for these calls. Please review them. Please tell me what I can do better. Data over feelings. Look over the numbers and the metrics, because again, feelings is so vague. You want to look at the actual numbers and the data behind those so you can actually work on the bottleneck. And thirdly is repetition and reinforcement, making sure your reps are constantly repeating things so they can continue to get better. And with repetition will come reinforcement, where it becomes their new standard. So super important, and that's why I love sales as well. Sales is a pure repetition game. The more reps you put in, the better you get, the quicker you get. So all of these things, super important. And again, fulfilling these feedback loops in place. More important one in my opinion is immediate specific feedback, giving people the reps, the help they need ASAP, so they can continue to crush, they continue to go about their day. Moving on to the third point is leadership that goes into people's identity. Super important one, which I'll explain into the pillars. But the first point being is model the standard, right? As a coaching business owner, you need to model the standard the way we operate, the way we move around things, the way we think, the way we set our goals, the way we are ambitious, the way we're disciplined. You model the standard, especially when it comes to leadership. People want to have to at least want to be like you or have traits within you. And like I said, that's why you're very important in a leadership position, that you model the standard, that you show the people you lead first with the standard of how we operate as a company. This is our standard. This is how we go about things. We're ambitious and we instill that right identity into reps. It can sound confusing, but the whole point being is that just model the standard. Be the example of your company as the forefront leading the company. Secondly, is build an identity of excellence. Kind of also modeling into the standard part, but just having an identity where it's excellence. We expect the most out of one another. Camaraderie is built within that as well. Everybody constantly gets better, and not even just in the sales aspect, on a life aspect. Everybody has excellence when it comes to their fitness levels. Everybody has excellence when it comes to outside of the sales world, when it comes to their life, their social life. All of these things, you need to build and instill an identity of excellence in all fields and in all endeavors in any life within the whole team. And that's how everybody abides by. And thirdly is recognition of performance. When you have a leaderboard, you want to make sure you can recognize the people who are at the top. Because if you're on a leaderboard, and like I said, every sales meeting you have every single day, the first person gets shouted out, the second, the third, it reinforces being recognized and rewarded for being at the top. And the thing is with leaderboards, it would stain me if I wasn't on the top 3 leaderboard. I hated it. I didn't like not being mentioned, not being praised. And because of that, I pushed harder. And again, because I was recognized for my performance, when I did get onto the top 3 leaderboards, I wanted to do it more and more and more. So actually recognizing performance, and that's another thing that goes into things like retention. People will feel more valued if they're constantly being shouted out for their performance. And then aside from that, it's like people like to be recognized if they perform. So giving that spotlight to people when they do perform. And like I said, it's a flywheel effect. It will affect the person who's being shouted out on. And likely if you have an identity of excellence within your team, people want to be that person next time. Next day tomorrow, they want to be on the top of the team leaderboard and they want to be the one who was congratulated. Now, fourthly is mindset. Mindset is a very good one as well. The first one being is self-mastery is instilled. Kind of like the excellence point from here, but self-mastery is instilled within all aspects of life. Everybody gets better and everybody has a self-mastery to them where they're getting smarter. They're working on their physical aspect. They're working on their business acumen. They're learning about sales. They're getting better about sales. Everything in their life is targeted towards self-mastery, mastering themselves, their personal development, their life development, all of these things. Self-mastery is instilled. When I was in these coaching businesses where we would sometimes have specific calls purely based off mindset, the mindsets you need to have when it comes to dealing with people constantly hanging up on you. How do you maintain a constant level of good energy, good frequency? Even calls on regarding the mindset of winners and the mental models that some of the best performers on the team, what do? How do they go about the way they operate, the way they think? And that's another way of actually instilling that within your team. Secondly, you want to instill within your team that concept of being rather than doing. Kind of like manifesting, right? If you want to be a certain individual, you want to achieve a certain outcome, you need to start acting like that guy already, where it's not just doing the 200 calls every single day or hitting the KPIs as a closer, closing the deals. Instead, you're being that person who already does that. You're acting like that, the way you think, the way you speak. And when you have the operating mindset of like being rather than doing, the physical aspect catches up. Eventually you are doing it and eventually you do become that person. And that was a very good advice when I initially came onto one of the offers that I was working in. And I was just given the advice of be like the top guy, even though you're not the top guy yet. And with time, with repetition, with also doing along with being, I became that individual. So it's super important that you be and instill that within your team. They end up being like the persons that they want to be like. Thirdly is focusing on mastery. So also when it comes to self-mastery here, but mastery on constantly getting better. Mastery on even listening onto the littlest things on their sales calls, or when they review their calls, when they have their pod trainings. The level of mastery required if you really want to be at the top, you've got to be super critical on yourself. Like I was super beyond critical. I would have a 30-minute call. Everything would go perfect. If there was a segment or a comment I made where I interrupted the person by accident, subtly, I would be furious. And I would work on that. And again, that's the standard of excellence I operated on. And that's the level of mastery you want your team to operate on, where they constantly work on the little details and they get better and better and better and better. And they don't stop getting better. And lastly, the final pillar is autonomy and ownership, which is the goal after implementing and instilling these pillars where you have the training environment, you have the feedback loops, you have that leadership set in place, you have the good mindset, and you're instilling the right mindset, is getting them to the point where they have full autonomy and ownership. And the first pillar for this is teach self-diagnosis. Teach people how to actually go through their own problems before they can come to you. Because before I would even reach out to my sales manager for advice, I would have to be prepared to go there with the right data, with the right metrics, and with my own self-diagnosis of the issue, and then bring the records to him and see exactly what should have been made, and then actually get the proper feedback. So teaching self-diagnosis when it comes to reviewing their own calls, showing them ways that they can do it. You also have things like AI right now. One thing I would do, when you have a sales call recording, you have a Fathom transcript, you can plug that into AI, and you can even program the AI and you can give it a prompt of, these are the qualities, the way you sell. I train this is my offer, this is how we go about it. Here's the closing framework and the SOPs my sales manager gave me. Now give me constructive feedback based off my diagnosis. Here's a transcript, give me your take. So little things like that. That's one example, that's with AI. But even teaching self-diagnosis on a level where they can review their own calls and they can already spot patterns. They can see what could have been better. One thing I would do as well when it came to self-diagnosis is if I spoke to somebody, I had a conversation, and for some reason the deal wasn't set, I would have a spreadsheet that goes over why I didn't set people. And I would see patterns and I would see the recognition of, okay, this is coming up 2 times now. Next day came up another time. Third day came up another time. I would now know that I need to probably work on that. That's what I should probably do. So super important to actually have that self-diagnosis where they can do it at their own accord. But again, use you if needed. Again, that's why you're set in place, is that you're there to support them if they need that help. Next is give responsibility, not just tasks. So another reason of autonomy and ownership, this also helps with the retention of reps so they can continue to stay there, they continue to keep on crushing, is give people responsibility. Give people responsibility, especially if you're a top performer. If you have a top performer on the team, give them the responsibility of being able to mentor other people on the team. Give them the responsibility of being able to run a sales meeting in case you're not there, and just give that ownership and that autonomy where they can continue to get better. They feel like they're getting better. They're learning new skill sets. And like I said, you give them that responsibility, not just tasks. Thirdly is experimentation. Be open to experimentation from your reps. Because here's the thing, your reps are the bloodline of the whole operation, right? They're the ones who are actually on the other side of it, the ones collecting the money, the one setting the money. And that's why experimentation is important. When you want to optimize things from a managerial standpoint, speak to your people. What are they saying? What are the patterns that they're seeing? Whether it's the lead quality, whether it's the way they're going about it, whether it's these type of prospects are like this, maybe we should go about separating them into a different VSL or a different pre-call video before they speak to the closer. Opening up experimentation, because the best feedback and the best data you'll get is from people on the front line. The people actually in the trenches, the people actually doing the selling. And again, opening up an environment of experimentation where you're open to their ideas, you're open to their suggestions. And that's how you also have a team of consistent winners where people aren't just selling, people are actually, they have an incentive to want the coaching business to grow. And like I said, you foster an environment where you open experimentation. You listen to new ideas, you listen to perspectives, and obviously apply it if it need be. And those are the 5 pillars that I would implement into a coaching business if you want to turn a team of average reps into a team of consistent winners who are dialed in from every aspect of life, their sales life, their self-development life. All these things gets the best out of one another. And by extension, your coaching business will grow. So I hope you got a lot of value from the video. And even if you want myself and my team to look into your coaching business, look at the bottlenecks, there should be a link at the bottom of the video where you can book in a time for an audit. I'm happy to speak with you, go over your bottlenecks, and obviously you can take as much of it as you wish. But aside from that, really apply these principles. This is literally, I've seen it firsthand, how you turn average reps into top performers is by instilling these right pillars and doing the basics, but doing the basics well.